Hi, I'm Jack Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation. I want to thank you all for participating in the Financial Leadership Academy. A lot of you have been asking as we've gone through this work together, what can we do now and start to implement in the churches as we move from being students to action? I have a few different ways, and actually 10 different ways I think you can take right now, action you can take right now that will transform what you're doing in your churches. These ideas come as divided into two areas. One, what you personally can do, and the other is what can you do with a team within your church. Being a leader means you're going to create a team. So right now, here are the 10 ways to grow giving now. The first, and again, in this category, the leadership, this is about you. Become the financial leader you've trained to become. We've spent a lot of time together. You've had a number of different presentations, personnel, and time of coaching. Now it's time to take action. The personal statement that you make yourself is, what do you believe? What will I do? And then what I will challenge others to do. That, my friends, is leadership. In order to change the finances of a church, it begins with us as a leader and extends to our team of leaders that we bring in. The second is you have a great resource library. Please don't just have them sit on a shelf. The tools that we gave you, the books that we gave you, all of the different forms that we gave you, gift these books back to the church. Create the first, perhaps, stewardship library in your church. This will help encourage others to also be generous, not just in time and talent, but things that they have that would benefit others. The third, really establish stewardship as a stewardship chair. Get somebody that is interested in this in your church. Solicit somebody to become the stewardship chair. This will become a key position in your ministry. It's the ministry of fundraising, or the ministry of stewardship, or the ministry of finances. I know many of you have different committees. You may have an endowment chair, you may have a financial chair, you may have other things. What we're talking about is people that are gifted in explaining to others what generosity and faith is all about. You must build that team for the renewal challenge that's ahead. In other words, as we re-enter from the COVID period to new ministries in new different ways and incorporating all these different pieces that have come together, it all will need fundraising. It'll all need finances. It'll all need stewardship, faith, and generosity. So create that team. Elevate that to a high team in your church. Ways to grow giving now also for you is what you personally can do as a leader and demonstrate to others. First, tithe your paycheck if you have not been doing that. Many of you, I know that this is very fundamental, but reminding others to tithe their paychecks too, it's not a bad thing to share with the congregation, I have tithed my paycheck. Stimulus checks. Money has being distributed right now in stewardship ways with stimulus checks. We're getting these stimulus checks. Many people don't need the stimulus checks. Perhaps you could tithe yours as an example and lead in that direction. This is money that I received. This is monies that I want to tithe. I want to make other members better, and I believe in what we're setting out to do in the church. Your tax return. When you get a tax return, it is a return of your own money, but at that moment may be the time that you have a little extra that you could tithe to some special fundraising or ministry or project or general fund of the church. Not everything has to be going to a special spot or hole. Some of it is just for the greater good of the congregation. The last two pieces are around gifts that you receive, part of your compensation you receive through the hard work of your congregation and your annual conference. The first is a pension. You get a pension that's given to you, and I know your church struggles to put the money into the pension for you. You can, with a stroke of a pen, name your church as a partial beneficiary. We all want to protect our family. We all want to make sure that our families that survive us receive a portion of the pension. But your church family can also do that. You can provide for the church family. And this, in turn, gives you an opportunity to communicate with a congregation that I have done this, and I encourage you to do that as well. It's a gift we share with our church family. Life insurance is the same. You're provided with basic life insurance, and you can name a beneficiary on the life insurance. Again, these things don't cost you out of your pocket today, but they're benefits that you're receiving that you're simply trying to return a portion back to the people that provided it to you. Think in terms of that, and think in terms of then in a will, gifts, and others. But those actions, leading by example, will ring very, very true with your congregation. Encourage others to join you in making these renewed commitments on personal goals to help support our church as we head to the new church coming. Number 5, we have heard in the very beginning Phil and Janet Jameson talking about a theology of money. It also encouraged you to write a personal autobiography of money. How do you view money, and from where does that come in your family? I grew up with very little, but I didn't know we had very little. We had everything that we needed. I never had everything that I wanted. My personal money autobiography created a real viewpoint in money for me of both what I could do with money, that how I would get money, and how I would live my life in sharing with others. My personal money autobiography is reviewed frequently. It reminds me what's in my core. And discovering what money represents to you and why is vitally important. When you see somebody that has something, do you view that as too audacious? Why would you do that? Why would you not want them to be empowered to have the things and resources that they've worked so very hard for? Lead a Bible study or a small group study, or maybe a seminar on this topic. I think we have a relationship with money in this country that is driven predominantly through advertising and marketing and being told there's things we absolutely cannot live without. Think of what it would be like to advertise to your church why money, the lifeblood of money through your church, is vitally important to ministry, mission, and outreach, and share that with others. I believe you can do that in any of those ways, with a Bible study, small group study, seminar on the topic, and certainly preaching it from the pulpit. Number 6, incorporate generosity into your Palm Sunday, your Easter Sunday messages. This time that's coming in right now is actionable right now. Amplify the greatest gift that we've been given through personal sacrifice as our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And many acts of generosity, benevolence, gifts center around that. This is a profound time of the year not to ask for money and gifts. We certainly get blessed with Easter gifts, but more about the culture and generosity of our faith, what we believe, and how that is shared with others in a Christian way. Number 7, this is background work to help you plan for the times ahead. This is going to be vital, and it's going to take some time to work. You're going to need the team to do this. Again, this isn't something that is only on your shoulders. Something like naming the beneficiary of your life insurance of a portion to the church is on you. It is by leading. This is something that gets into creating that team, this ministry of fundraising that they can do. First, what percentages of families are pledging in your church? The pastor must know these pieces. By the book of discipline, the pastor shall know these items. I know we're in a lot of historic older Methodist churches. There's traditions within the church, the finance committee and others. Go back to the books that Cliff Christopher has written and others. This is part of your role as a pastor in the spiritual challenge somebody is having. But what percentages of your family pledge is important to know who is committed to your church, not necessarily in the percentages and the ways, but are people so invested and involved in your ministry that they are invested in it in a financial way as well? What do the top families give? So often donors want to know, well, where am I on the giving scale? Am I giving more than I should? There's people that withhold. Am I doing okay in my giving? Am I giving about what's average? All of this is somebody's personal role. But what do the top families give? The top families, and generally we understand from research, there's 5 to 10 families that are paying over half of the bills for the church. You must know who those are. And more importantly, what would happen to your church if you lost them and have not created additional givers that are moving up into that role? So what does the average family give is important. What do the top families give is important. But the last part is really a pulse check of generosity. Why do some families not give at all? What is the reasoning behind that? Personally, my wife was Roman Catholic. My wife gave as a 10% tithe from the very beginning of the time that I knew her. When she no longer could work because of dementia and frontotemporal dementia, she had lost her job, which meant she lost her career, which meant she lost her financial livelihood. The problem was very few people in the church bothered to understand that. They saw the statistics going down, but they didn't reach out and say, why? These moments of ministry outreach are because we understand the behavior of our donors so well. I gladly would have accepted anybody calling and saying, this has gone down. What they did, and this is what I would caution about, it's personal and has to be made personal. It's a call, it's an outreach, or this stewardship or generosity team would have to outreach. Instead, we got many letters from the Archdiocese, many letters from the church saying, are you living to your financial commitment? Are you, where is your donors and where is your gifts and where are your graces? And are you checking yourself? But nobody ever called to hear the story that my wife was beginning the long journey with frontotemporal dementia. She was no longer in a financial position to do that. And if anything, we needed more prayer. We needed more help from people to sit with her and comfort her. All these things that the church family could have chosen to do. Instead, they wanted to take the easy path, send reminders and emails. I encourage you to look at your ministry in a dynamic way to truly understand the family and where they are financially. Many families have been devastated by COVID. Many families are going to be suffering and trying to recover financial setbacks from a long time to come. But remember, that's a ministry opportunity of faith and outreach. And we have others that have not been affected that are looking to truly live and help and share with others. Develop and deploy your team's year-round stewardship plan. You have learned this. Incorporate annual and capital and legacy pockets of giving from Cliff Christopher in all things that you do, not each week for 52 weeks, but monthly and other times. Shift these topics to what we give annually from our annual income and our annual offerings and our plate collection. But capital gifts are going to be needed. The parking lot is going to need to be repaved. The roof is going to need to be put on the church. Plumbing is going to be needed. Heating and cooling and air conditioning. Plan for those things well in advance and understand that within the life cycle of an individual at the church, a congregant, there's going to come a time that we're going to have a capital need and say, can you do a little extra so we can do this project at the church? Last, the legacy pocket, and I'm going to be talking about that more, is around what's your legacy? Have you included the church in your life insurance, in your will, or even in your pension fund by naming a beneficiary? Those actions are really how we will be remembered with a congregation, and we can share those stories of gratitude with others. It really does incorporate our legacy on this earth. Return the offering, number 9, and this is your whole worship team. Return the offering to a high moment. If you have dropped this from your online giving, I think you've missed the boat. If we're going and doing worship remotely, is the offering missing from that? Have you thought about maybe putting that at the very beginning of the worship, where folks were joined here today to celebrate all that we have been blessed with over the last week? We're together again. We've been loved by God. We're sharing generously with others. And remember, folks, the church is here for you because of your gifts and your offerings. I think you need to continue to reconnect with that despite being in online worship mode today. But what would happen if you moved this to first and entered not as a moment of ask, but as a moment of gratitude and offering back in the next hour and worshiping God for all the blessings that we have had in this past week? An attitude of gratitude is going to go a long way to creating your culture of generosity in your church. The last item, change the language in your church. So many times, different committees and groups, could be trustees, could be the finance team, could be SPRs, all these groups, they're worried about paying the bills. Folks, worrying about paying the bills is something that we all do. But are we living the vision of a Christian vision for our church? Are we living the vision about how we can help others in our community, our congregation, and the world? By doing that, generosity can't help but happen. If we're always worried about, do we have enough? Do we have enough? Do we have enough? It's not the same as when we have, we're going to do, or we have an abundance of things here. It's how we choose to use the resources. We have a new program that's going to start for you, and I hope you will consider it. Partnering for Vital Ministries brings two of the people that you've seen. Andy Lunt created a ministry over 40 years. He's partnering with Ted Brown, a lay leader that had dynamic impact and change in his local church. We are allowing them to partner with Vital Ministries in a series of online programs. These programs are short by design. They're 15-minute to 20-minute videos that you can watch. They can be worked weekly. You can build a Bible study around them. You can share them in a link with others in your congregation. This gift of Ted and Andy will help dynamically change your church in ways that you can partner in Vital Ministries and create a better culture of generosity in your church. Folks, friends, students, these are 10 things you can do today. They're all within your power and your ability as a leader to create the team in the church that is going to take your church to new and dynamic ways of delivering ministry in your community. I know you can, because I've witnessed each one of you, and I know also that you will. God bless you all, and thank you for watching. You are becoming great financial leaders, and now we're shifting to what you can do in your congregation today. How can you create a legacy plan and a legacy program within your church? Many people will say, well, is now a good time to talk about legacy giving? Now is the perfect time to talk about legacy giving. How many of us are being approached by a college, a university, a hospital system, a nonprofit organization to include that organization in some form of legacy gifts? I'm going to go over with you some of the terms around legacy giving. I'm going to include some parts that you may not consider to be legacy gifts. And more importantly, we're going to conclude with ways you can incorporate legacy giving right now in your congregation and get started. So let's get started on ways you can include legacy giving now. The first question would be, how could I assure you that the Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation will provide the Financial Leadership Academy continuing in 2021 and beyond? The answer is we have an endowment fund at the Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation that is clearly earmarked for education. We don't use the gift for any of our current operating expenses. We only use it for your purposes of being a student. Can you say the same for your church? Do you have an endowment fund? And if you have an endowment fund, is it open and encouraging others to join it? Legacy gifts, endowed gifts, assure mission and ministry well beyond our time and our generation. Many of these are considered permanent gifts. Why incorporate legacy giving now? Well, most people don't want to discuss death and dying issues, but everyone in America is aware that over 500,000 people have lost their lives to COVID. Death is in front of us all the time. You perform funerals all the time. You have congregants and family members and others that pass. Our lifetime in life is but short. What we do with that and what our legacy when we leave behind is part of legacy giving. Many of us know families that have been impacted with a loss. You're the pastor, you suffer with these people, you feel their pain, you guide them to their final church. Families now show renewed interest in financial planning and wills and beneficiary designations and insurance. People are focused for a new generation around, are my financial plans in order in the event I pass? Philanthropy and legacy giving are frequent topics today in the media. We read about Jeff Bezos and abundant philanthropists that are out there, and they're making big, impactful gifts. They're helping during the COVID crisis. They're sharing and being imparting with the gifts and graces and things that they've built up, not just in death. Many are making that financial commitment today. We know of the Bill Gateses of the world and the Gates Foundation. We admire these large givers, but so much of legacy giving in America is the small givers, the people that remember in some small way their church in the legacy gifts. The church has always held a unique role in the legacy giving discussions because we are in a position to prepare others for life and death and resurrection. That puts us in a unique position that a college or a university or a hospital doesn't have. We're people's guides to Christian generosity. Many faith donors, you hear this difficult times, but what has happened over the last year in 2020 was the research statistics say Americans doubled down on annual giving. Those that got stimulus checks that did not need them, many turned a portion or all of it over to their ministry to help others that may be falling short on their giving. Annual gifts were boosted by these acts. People understood the change that we were in. Capital gifts still were needed. Churches are buildings. The buildings are going to have a finite life. We must always boost them and continue a plan to infuse capital, not only just for the buildings, but also for an expansion of the ministry projects that we wish to do. And legacy philanthropy was facing, in the face of COVID, they could face adversity about legacy and philanthropy. But nonprofit and faith communities are taking advantage of the current environment. We're seeing the things in our own mailboxes and in our own inboxes and email. The communications surrounding legacy gifts are very strong. The Lilly School tracks giving during disasters. So far with COVID-19, record levels of seven-figure gifts are being made to organizations from people that want to help the pandemic and provide for others. Human services organizations in particular are seeing new donors. People that have lost jobs that need food, people that have lost careers and need shelter, clothing, rent monies. All of these things are stories in the media on a nightly basis. Regular donors to church organizations are generally making right now, this is the data, larger gifts when asked. Virtual events, meaning online giving events, have blossomed. Giving days, special match days, special need requests are raising more than in past in-person large events did. There's an ease of communication of being able to reach others. Planned giving suffered a setback during the 2008 Great Recession, but planned giving prospects now appear to be more open. As people age, they're faced with the understanding at some point they're going to be distributing all of the possessions that they've been blessed with in life. There are many definitions as to what is a deferred gift, a planned gift, or legacy gift. My goodness, I've taught 3-day seminars on this topic, but I'll make it short for you at a starting point for your journey in legacy and planned giving. A planned gift or a legacy gift is a donation made by an individual through a will or other formal designation. A deferred gift is an arrangement prior to the emergence of planned giving industry. This was the general term that was used for a donor that didn't give the money today, but there was an expectation upon their end of life, there would be a gift made. Planned giving, the term is often used because these gifts involve some professional. It could be somebody like myself working with the donor's other advisors. It could be an accountant. It could be an attorney. It could be the family members. But there is a plan that comes, and it takes time to establish the plan. The plan is written, for example, a designation in the gift of the will, or it's planned such as naming the church a beneficiary on a portion of life insurance, or on an account, or an IRA account, and designating that beneficiary. All of this has led in legacy giving world today to talk about planned giving. Legacy giving is a you phrase, you meaning you are the donor leaving the legacy in the future. Legacy giving can take several forms, including a reoccurring donation today that is followed by an end of life final gift. Legacy giving emerged as a donor centric approach. The donor is benefiting to it to focus on the donor, not particularly the method of giving. What I'm saying here is within our church, I don't expect all of the students and others in your church to understand the ins and outs and language of legacy giving. It can get quite complex. But when you focus it on a donor centric approach to a donor that approached you in the church and said, I'd like to do something extra, or I'm thinking about leaving some money to the church when I pass, that is the beginning signal to get some professionals involved. Over the past year, we've had churches approach us, church members or pastors, that have said, I have somebody in my church that would like to leave a legacy gift. Will you talk to them? Well, yes. The Mid-Atlantic Foundation, we do that. We have talked to donors to the tune of about $7 million in the past year. People planning that much generosity with their church for a future date. It's not today. It's something that they make as a legacy plan. Many churches, though, talk themselves out of these types of gifts. These are the myths of legacy giving. The first is our donors are different. They don't have anything to leave. Well, folks, at the end of life, there's so much we won't be taking with us. Almost all of it stays behind. And it is in our power, through a will or through a designation, or just simply dying without an intestate. But those things that we left behind are going somewhere. The next myth I often hear in church is, but our donors don't have the capacity to make planned gifts. I believe that you as a pastor have the capacity to become a planned giver. I believe you as a pastor have the capacity. Now you're saying, but I'm only a pastor. Yes, but you have a pension fund that you can name your family and your church family as a beneficiary on your legacy plan incorporated with your pension. Life insurance. Many of us are given term life insurance or a policy. Again, our act is to take care of our family first, but incorporate our church family also in that gift and tithing some of that life insurance. Remember, the people in the congregation are reaching out into their pockets to provide those benefits for you. I believe there's a moment of generosity where you can return a portion of that back. The next one that I hear often is our donors aren't interested in planned giving. Well, is this because a donor didn't come and said, I'd like to learn about planned giving, or because you had in the bulletin, have you considered your church for a planned gift? I don't expect donors to always come up with this, but I do believe if you're asked, you'll respond. And it's as simple as a line in the bulletin. It's as simple as a line in your newsletter. It's as simple as ways, all these different ways we talked about. Have you considered the church for a portion of your life insurance benefit as a beneficiary? Have you considered the church for a portion of your retirement plan? Have you considered the church for a gift in your will? I don't believe donors aren't interested. There are moments when all of us create our last will and testimony. We have to be ready and have to be willing, and maybe we just have to prompt some of that thinking as well. That's part of our ministry. Our donors prefer we don't talk to them. We won't take our calls or visits. Folks, I believe most people today know that anything doesn't happen without the gifts coming in to support it. Even our online worships had to come from the generosity for us to be able to afford to do these things. So this idea that our donors don't want us to talk to them about money, I think it's the way you're talking about money that may turn off donors. Increase your skills as a financial leader now. You've been given great gifts and books and materials and conversations about changing and shaping the culture of generosity in your church. It's not about the money, it's about living a Christian generous life. The other I hear is our church is different. We don't need planned gifts. Well, that may be true, but your donor may need to leave your church a planned gift. So is it about you and the church, or is it about helping a donor be generous upon their legacy? Well, and then the final one is we had one person leave it a long time ago. What that tells me is we have not created a legacy culture in the church. We may have a recognition group that says these members have made a pledge to leave a legacy gift. It's as simple as that. We don't need to know the dollar amount. But have we created a culture or a society or a group whereby somebody that's made a designation can fill out a piece of paper just saying that they have made a designation, and we increase this legacy giving part of the church? So why make the effort on legacy gifts? Literally billions of dollars are passed on to the next generation each year. Many nonprofit organizations that we understand as leaders you're in competition for the dollars with hospitals and nursing homes and rescue squads, and everybody's asking for, and they ask for a minimum of 4 times a year about legacy gifts. If we're going to stay on top of it, shouldn't we also? Donors have so many possible ways they may leave one of these gifts. We don't need to know them all. You need to know where the resources are to help understand them and give that to the donor. The stability of any of our churches, particularly today, is based on financial security. It's been a difficult year. Many of our churches received PPP funding. Many of our churches received additional gifts as people did come forward and bless the church with some stimulus monies that they got and turned it to the church to do greater good. But the stability of our ministries is all based on the bills that we have to pay, the salaries that we have to pay, and keeping the church there for the members that are participating in that church. Legacy gifts also so often take the church into a new ministry. We've explained to you before about the value of having a wish list or an idea. If we received a legacy gift, our church would fill in the blank. That begins to take you into a new ministry, a new dynamic. Would you start a food pantry? Would you change the look of the building? Would you make it handicap accessible? What would you do if you received a legacy gift? That list should be shared and shared frequently with the congregation, included in a newsletter, included from the pulpit, and included in conversations. Why make the effort of legacy gifts? Churches with endowed funds are resilient to the income flow of plate giving, dependent solely on when people are there. Many churches take their endowed fund gifts, their withdrawal from their endowments, during the summer months when giving may be slower in the church because of people vacationing. Forward thinking beyond today and into tomorrow is all about the legacy and sustainability. Remember, our vision of providing stewardship education to individuals and churches is based on our endowment, and we know we're going to have funding towards that each and every year. It moves your thinking from let's survive this to let's thrive. You saw that in FLA. It's time to thrive. An endowment fund helps support that with some assurance of funding each and every year. And funding ministry goes beyond the generosity of today's collection plate. We all can make similar commitments as people who became before us. I'm in awe of the people that gifted the church for us to be in it today. Many of our buildings are over 100 years old. Think of the faith and generosity of those congregants. Dollar for dollar, they reached open and gifted to the church from their wallet. They built the church. Many of us haven't been there to build a church. We inherited a building. Think if you can make the same cultural environment in your church, the similar commitments to the people that are in your congregation today as those that came before us and gifted us this building for today's use. We all accumulate during our life. Everything that we accumulate is going to be left to others or the world. So why make an effort for your personal legacy? It's an act we perform selflessly for others. Our personal legacy is held in the memory of others. All of our possessions can be bequeathed to other people. We hold personal power to empower others through these gifts. We can designate it for a purpose, a specific purpose. It could be for our church or one of the ministries within our church. We hold Christian beliefs in life after death, and we also can have after death our gifts going to the greater good and purpose. Here's 5 things to analyze right now if you're reinvigorating or first establishing a program in your church. Understand the level of fundraising maturity. Where are the givers in your church, and where are they in their own giving generosity? Where are they emerging? Are they 10% tithers? Are they 2% tithers? Are they 1% tithers? Are they trying to move the needle of giving? Maybe they don't have annual income that can supply this, but maybe upon their death, they have gifts that they could leave to the church. This is so often a part of the process. Understanding your church's level of fundraising maturity is important. Articulate and communicate key elements of legacy giving. We have many pre-printed paragraphs and blurbs or short stories about this. You don't need to come up with it. You may come up with it if you've had a recent gift or people considering it. But if you're stuck and you need materials, contact the foundation. Also, assess the leadership environment of legacy gifts. If people are on your endowment program, managing your endowment fund, and they're on that committee, ask a vital question. Do you believe in it enough that you too have left some small piece of legacy in your legacy plan to the endowment? So many endowment committees I meet with become extensions or the investment club for the church. They're worried about how the money is being managed and what's the percentage and what's the return. The true act of an endowment committee functioning fully in the church is a position to encourage others to, yes, I left a legacy gift and you can too. Contact the endowment committee. It's not about managing the gifts that you have. It's about encouraging everyone to consider a legacy gift. That's the purpose of the endowment committee. And I can guarantee that the gifts that are there in the congregation today will raise far more money than just simply an investment return on the monies that were left yesterday. Be realistic about the budget needs from legacy giving. Too often people receive a legacy gift and then they want to immediately drain the legacy gift pool on all of the urgent needs of today. Are you endowing it for future generations? Are you taking an individual's money, like myself, and saying, well, through Jack's legacy gift, he's tithing and offering to us each and every year as if he is still sitting in the pews with us? Be realistic, though, about the budget needs from legacy giving and plan for that, not just annually, but over a 2 and a 3 year horizon to help you achieve long-term goals and needs within your congregation. Set these clear goals in asks and outcomes, not only for the people guiding it in the endowment committee, but also for the congregation as to what projects would they like to see and what would they support in a legacy gift and perhaps a capital gift today. Also, talk about leaving a legacy gift. Make it a badge of honor in the congregation. Make it somebody that's recognized is they've believed in our church beyond their lifetime. Prospect. Always be asking, is this person a candidate? The woman that may be single, elderly, and has never left more than $500 a year to your church may be in a position to leave it all in a legacy gift. She may not have a family or friends. She may consider the church her family, and she wants to provide it. She's worried today about having enough to take care of herself or nursing home, but upon her death, all of this resource gets shared and freed up for those that have cared for her in her lifetime. And that's the legacy that she would want to leave. Focus on donor-friendly giving vehicles. There are trusts and complex giving strategies. This is only for 1, 2 to maybe 5% of the population. Most people, as I said, it's as easy as a will. It's as easy as a designated beneficiary of a life insurance plan. It's as easy as naming a beneficiary on your retirement plan. You don't need to have the complexities of the how. You need to be able to explain the simplicity of it. By going through it yourself, you will share generously with your congregation from your heart because your heart helped you do that gift. Don't expect folks to leave legacies out of the clear blue. We're almost surprised when that does happen. Make people aware that you value legacy gifts in your congregation. I don't care if they're honorariums or small gifts that you receive from a will or in memory of somebody, but honor those and let the congregation know how much you value those. Try talking to donors about paying it forward, not just today, but for tomorrow. And you'll acquire many more legacy gifts this way than you will about methodologies. And many gift vehicles and ways of making legacy gifts will come through. Also, prospect broadly, meaning it's okay to take and have groups focus in on this. Do you have a committee or a group that's meeting with people to talk about legacy giving in the church? If you're short on legacy giving, do you have a way today that you're meeting with people after church, perhaps a focus group, reaching out to a group of leaders in the church and say, legacy giving could become important to this church. How can you two guide this process? Asking them to be part of a plan and planning for the church around discussions of legacy gifts will often lead to them to connect with their heart to doing it also. So I believe often that you get this team around you, you build this support, and you have these conversations. Folks, I'd like the 10 of you to meet with me today and talk about what do you think legacy giving, an effective endowment program, would mean to this church. How would we structure it? How would we do it? Do we have we already have a program, but it's not being very effective. Maybe the last gift we got was 10 years ago. We need to step that up, and you do it best through connections with people. And when somebody has a heart connection, a passion about it, you can't help but take action on it. So the donors that make frequent donations, don't rely on them. Someday they will not be there, but they could be there as a legacy givers because they're making frequent contributions. Your loyal volunteers, the consistent mid-level donors, the grateful users of services, and formal council or board or committee or staff members. These are all ways that you can help launch an effective legacy giving. They're the people that I would talk with first about formulating or relaunching a legacy program or an endowment in our church. but they're the leaders that are also capable of being givers to this. Don't make it seem complicated. We're having a discussion here. You don't need to be an expert to promote most of the types of legacy gifts. The three I said I would focus on is all by beneficiary designation in a will, in an insurance, or an IRA. Bequests in a will or trust are important. Beneficiary designations, all these things that are here are important vehicles to at least understand the basics of. Make it easy to find information on your website so folks that are inspired today to leave a legacy gift, they know where they can go. You can link to the foundation's own legacy giving website. We are not looking for your legacy gift. We are here trying to partner with you on ways that the legacy gift can come to help us all. So it's my job, our job with this maumflegacy.org is a website that's only focused on legacy giving. It is such an easy way to add that link on your own website for your church and focus and say, if you're considering a legacy gift, click here. We begin with a Christian preamble to a will. I remember how impactful it was when I first saw that. A Christian preamble template we have available. For somebody that's planning a will, you may want to include it. You may want to include it in your own will. There's copies of it that we'll distribute to you. Plan to be a donor family over a lifetime, and that's your legacy engagement. Your family is important, and more importantly, are your church family. Russell James, who has studied this and written numerous books over it, found that people who have had charity consistently in their giving plan for the long term, on average, leaves 4 times the amount of money as those that have left it just to charity in the last 2 years before their death. Spread the word. Make a case for legacy giving. Have brochures or pieces that can fall out of your church bulletin or in a bulletin rack. But you do need to ask that question, because it happens when somebody is simply taking the effort to plan for their will. That's, if there is no will, there is no way. But at the time a couple may be forming a will, that may be the time that they're looking to make legacy gifts. It's a timing thing. And last, you can build your 4 disciplines of execution with this. And here's some simple steps to 4DX using the 4 disciplines of execution about this. These are skills you've had. These are materials you've worked with, and you can be a leader in your congregation this way. Build a legacy team leading to a legacy society. It's as simple as saying, if you have pledged to leave a legacy gift, we don't need to know the amount. You're going to sign a pledge that says you have. Welcome to the Legacy Society. Act on the lead measures. How many people are you calling and reaching out that we have this Legacy Society formed? Did you know, Bob and Betty, that we have a Legacy Society? I just wanted to call and let you know. That's the lead measures. That's the input leading to this. Keep the compelling scoreboard. Who have you asked? Who have you considered? The number of people who have not considered it, and most importantly, who has signed that legacy pledge that says, I too am included as a legacy donor to this church. Create the cadence of accountability. Who is doing the calling? Who is doing the outreach? By when and how? Remember, talk to people. Prospect and separate people that you think would be good at legacy giving. This may be current church leaders. This may be people that you just know have maybe mentioned it in the past. Who can share this very presentation with in relaunching it? And who has expressed an interest in this ministry work? How would this fit into your own church setting? Finally, your personal action questions. Who can you share this presentation with? who's expressed this interest, what more information do you need from us at the foundation, and where can you explore more on this topic, like our legacy planning website. And when will this begin? The hardest part is the start. Why do you need to do this now? Trust me, millions of dollars of legacy gifts have been planned today for the future of tomorrow. You can do this. I'm looking forward to working with you on it. And this gift, this pool of endowed resources, can take your church into new directions. With blessed assurance, ministry will be done for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching. I'm here for you each and every day, and I'm very proud of you and your participation in the Financial Leadership Academy. Thank you so much.